And joining me now is Michael Lynk, former UN Special Rapporteur. Michael, good morning. So glad that you could join us. I want to begin by asking you about the risks of recognizing Palestinian statehood right now, given the ongoing conflict in Gaza and the fact that there are still hostages being held by Hamas.
I think that the risks of not recognizing a Palestinian state are much greater than those of recognizing a Palestinian state. What we've always wanted to do was to reward diplomacy, the rule of law, and UN resolutions. And these are very clearly in favor of Palestinian self-determination and a Palestinian state. Keep in mind that even before the announcements began in July and August that important European countries and Canada were going to recognize a Palestinian state by September, there already were 147 states that had recognized Palestine. We're expecting probably another 8 to 12 states over the next few weeks, primarily coming from Europe, will do so. And that'll bring us up to around 160. And there's already 164 states that recognize Israel. So it'll almost be at parity. I think by telling Palestinians and the Palestinian Authority that their patience in wanting to ensure that diplomacy works, that the international community is recognizing the importance of international law and the violations by Israel of international law, by annexing territory, by continuing to expand its illegal settlement enterprise, won't be rewarded, and that a Palestinian state is what we always had wanted to come out. The difference is that where Western leaders had always thought a Palestinian state would come from the end of the process of negotiations between Palestine and Israel, we now recognize that with Israel's expanding settlement population, with the war, this awful war in Gaza, and with frequent declarations by Israeli political leaders that there will never be a Palestinian state, we have to move this agenda up.
So practically speaking, though, is this largely symbolic? What does this mean for the future of Palestinians? And if Israel and the U.S. is saying this is not going to happen, then what?
Well, I think of the recognition of a Palestinian state at two levels. At one level, at the diplomatic level, it means that those who are recognizing Palestinian state within its internationally recognized borders of East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza will now assume a legal and political responsibility to ensure that that sovereignty is not interfered with by an occupying power such as Israel. It would mean that for Canada, we'd have to review our Canada-Israel Free Trade Agreement, which actually recognizes Israeli settlements as part of Israel for the purposes of bringing in Israeli goods and services into Canada tariff-free. That would have to change. But on another level, does the recognition of a Palestinian state mean we're any closer to it? And I think one can be much more skeptical with respect to that. There are now 360 plus Israeli settlements, all of them illegal, in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. They house around 750,000 Israeli settlers, and that increases by about 15 to 25,000 settlers per year. You know, you don't have to be a math genius to realize with that amount of settlers increasing on occupied Palestinian territory each year, it's going to be a very tough path to reach a Palestinian state, a genuine, contiguous Palestinian state.
And my last question then, how could the recognition impact the diplomatic balance between Israel, the U.S., and other nations that support statehood?
Well, all of these political leaders in Europe and in Canada, Australia, who are now taking the step to recognize a Palestinian state, recognize that the single biggest blockage for a Palestinian state to come into being is A, the Israeli settlement enterprise, and B, the enormous and very close relationship economically, militarily, diplomatically between the United States and Israel. And until that relationship weakens or the United States steps back from continuing to support Israel in virtually any of the steps it's taking that violate international law, a Palestinian state still is only on the horizon and not getting all that much closer. It's going to take a new counterweight of countries, particularly coming from Europe, which is the largest trading partner with Israel, I think, to impose sanctions on weapons, sanctions on free trade agreements, to bring home a cost to Israel for continuing to step beyond international law.
Michael Lynk is a former UN Special Rapporteur. Michael, as always, appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you.